You have an Alan and Alex tonight.
I know.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, I think Alex was voluntold to be here on short notice, so thank you, Alex.
So we're happy to be here.
Welcome. We'll try and make it as painless as possible for you. So. Perfect. I call to order the June 9th, 2025 meeting of the Yolo Transportation District. Let the record reflect that it is 6:02 p.m. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll of the Board of Directors?
City of West Sacramento,
Here.
City of Winters,
Here.
County of Yolo,
Here.
City of Davis.
Here.
City of Woodlands is not here yet, UC Davis and Caltrans. Here,
Here.
thank you.
Perfect. The next item to consider is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Perfect. Moved by Director Chapman, seconded by Director Harris. Let's see, and I can do an all in favor. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Next, we have item 3. Comments from public regarding matters on the consent calendar. So at this point in the meeting, the Yolo Transportation District accepts comments from the public on items that are not on our agenda and items included on our consent agenda. We do not call consent agenda items separately, but consider them all at once. As the agenda indicates, state law limits our ability to respond to comments, and for that reason, we may not respond if you are commenting on a matter that is not on the agenda. All matters on the regular agenda will include an opportunity for public comment after the staff presentation on each item. Is there any general public comment, Madam Clerk?
No public comment online.
No public comment online? I see our executive director saying something.
Sorry, yes, I just wanted to remind that we did receive a general public comment via email.
Okay, perfect. And that is in the record, right?
It is in the record and it's been printed for you. It's a petition for expanding or bringing Yolo bus service to the new building, a new state building on Richards Boulevard in downtown Sacramento.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you so much. All right, and so I saw that we do have some public comment in the room as well. So I will take the first general public comment. Do you want to come up? Yes. And then just for the record, can you state your name?
Okay, sure. State my name and in the roll call, City of Sacramento, County of Sacramento, and Sacramento State are here. Michael Barnbaum, for those 3. Thank you, Chair Early. I want to mention an event coming up, and it is on Saturday, June 14th. Accessible by Yolo Bus Route 40 at the stop on Anna Street and Todd Hunter Avenue in West Sacramento. And it's the Play Ball Sacramento at Alice Norman Bright Playfields. The event itself is from 10 a.m. to 12 noon and has been mentioned on athletics.com/playball. I plan to be present and volunteering at the event. So for any of folks watching the video stream and not in person today and are in Sacramento County, City, or Sacramento State, you can join me on Route 88 at Arden Del Paso at 6:44 a.m. We'll go to J&A arriving at 7:07. We'll ride Route 42A at 7:15 to the West Sacramento Transit Center at 7:26. And the very first Route 40 on a Saturday schedule will depart the Transit Center at 7:40, arriving around the ball fields around 7:54. So we hope to see you there. And this event is also being hosted by the cities of Sacramento and West Sacramento. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. I have another public comment. Please just state your name for the record.
Alan Hirsch. I would suggest we have our gentleman from Caltrans here every time. The most important transportation facility in our county is I-80. and 50. And I think it'd be reasonable with construction going on. There should be a report every month, of what's going on, what's planned. And the congestion, because it's so very important to so many people. It's gonna be shut down, I gather, this weekend for 4 days, eastbound. I think this is important. I think it should be reported. And this is the public forum, the only public forum I can think of it to do it, be recorded. So I hope that will be added to as a future agenda item. I think putting it on the YoloTD executive director, it's kind of on her direct can. I think a Caltrans representative should speak. Thank you.
Thank you for that public comment. Are there any other public comments?
It looks
Okay.
like someone raised their hand online.
Okay, I have a public comment from online, and this is again our general public comment.
Hello, please state your name. Hello, Alexandra.
Hi, sorry. Alexandra Arjo. Can you hear me?
You want to make a public comment?
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Would you
Okay,
like to-
sorry about that. Zoom issues. All right, my name is Alexandra Arjo, and I have a public comment adding to the petition for a new stop off of Richards Boulevard. I'm a state worker, and I work at the Maylee complex off Richards Boulevard. The new complex, which houses more than 5,000 workers, is more than a mile from downtown and has very limited parking options. Additionally, the adjacent Township 9 light rail station is scheduled to be shut down due to construction until next year. Starting July 1st, state workers are expected to report to the office 4 times a week, which will severely strain the parking options available. As you know, today the state workers of the Maylee complex submitted a petition with signatures from my fellow workers in Yolo County who are advocating for a new bus stop at Richards Boulevard. I am asking and urging the board to strongly consider this request and work to provide a stop for the express commute buses to this complex. I know it will make a difference and allow state workers, while they return to office, to have more commute options. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Are there any additional general public comments online?
No more public comments online.
Okay. Next is the consent calendar, items 4A through 4F. Does anyone wish to remove any items for discussion? Okay, looking left and right, seeing none, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, perfect. Moved by Director Vega, seconded by Director Ferrix. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, perfect. Motion passes. Next is the regular agenda. First, I have, I'm pretty sure, Executive Director Bernstein, are you presenting?
No, Ms. Federico will be presenting.
Perfect. Are you ready?
Yes,
Let's
good
do this.
evening, board. Good to see you all, members of the public. Friends, Deb. All right, so, we actually are here, we're gonna do a recap of the budget, fiscal year 25-26. Recap of the May 12th discussion, and then also doing just a quick timeline of, the budget development process. So I'll start there, and then we'll jump into the discussions that we had with the board at the May 12th meeting, and then open up for any questions that you might have. Next slide, please. So before we recap, this is the timeline. I'm trying to see it over there, sorry, let me just pull it up on my slides. So this is a timeline of our budget development process. So in March and April, we began our internal discussions about what our transit operations plans were. We also evaluated our capital projects, some of which we are carrying over from the previous year, and then a few that we've added in this current year. The overall approach to the operating and capital budget really was just to evaluate what was the most realistic planning to do, both on the operating side and capital, as far as, you know, what was the highest priority and had the most impact, as well as what we had sufficient funding for, and also the bandwidth of our staff, or whether or not, you know, how quickly we can push these projects forward. So that was kind of the overall theme and how we approached planning the operating and capital budget. And then April 30th, we delivered a copy of the draft budget to the jurisdictions. May 5th, we met with the Technical Advisory Committee and Citizens Advisory Committee for review and discussion of the draft budget. May 12th, we presented to the YoloTD Board of Directors and opened the public hearing. And then May 13th through June 8th was the public review period. And then today we're here tonight to present and recommend to the board the approval of the 25-26 budget and work plan and the adoption of the budget. So here I just categorize all the questions, comments, and concerns that came up during our May 12th budget discussion. Some also incorporate the feedback that we received in the Technical Advisory Committee meeting, as well as the Citizen Advisory Committee meeting. So I kind of categorize them in themes. So for the first one is just our overall budget assumptions and forecasting. There was a strong recommendation to include inflationary factors in the 5-year outlook. We also heard suggestions to explore a different forecasting model rather than continuing with the constant dollar approach. And then we also provided some clarification on what the impact of the 3.84 cost of living adjustment is, which is about $108,000. And then on the federal and state funding use, we had some questions there that the STF and LTF allocations are determined by SACOG and not by YoloTD staff. We also received feedback to revisit the practice of applying the flat $150,000 annual allocation of the 5307 Davis UZA funds. And as you've heard, staff has also dedicated quite a lot of effort in this past year to reconcile grants and pause on pursuing future or pause on pursuing other funding opportunities until we had everything reconciled and claimed eligible expenses, including supplemental discretionary funds. And then as a part of the discussion of our professional services budget, $40,000 was discussed about the grant writing consultant that we would like to bring on to assist with pursuing future grant opportunities and other funding sources. Just provided clarification that yes, 40,000 of the 200,000 is to go towards seeking some professional consulting help with our funding opportunities. And that we also plan on pursuing future opportunities that would fund any other professional services that we might need in the future. And then next slide, please. And then on the transit service and operations in the 5-year outlook, it does not currently assume any future cost increases for transit operations. The transit operations contract between 2027 and 2030. This approach is intentionally to preserve the district's flexibility and leverage the kind of competitiveness of the bidding process as we anticipate a new contract in the next year. And then also discussions about the expansion of Winter's B line, which we did in April 2025, and also a light discussion of restoring the 220C route in Winters. Then on the capital planning and reserve side, the board expressed appreciation for proactively setting aside capital reserves when unrestricted funds become available. It was kind of our way of just starting to have that discussion in the budget process that, you know, we need to start putting away for our capital needs. And then a second topic was brought up about establishing a capital asset policy that would include having a capital reserve threshold, which we do plan on doing. And then the STF and LTF distribution determination. it was important that we clarified that we do not determine the amounts from year to year or the fluctuations. And that STA funds are derived through a quarter-cent tax on diesel fuel. And then the LTF, that's a quarter-cent amount of general sales tax. So these funds are applied, the STA and LTF funds, we clarified also that those funds are applied as the last source of revenue after applying fares and federal funding and any other contributions that we receive from other local agencies. And then on the SB 125, this funding is programmed to help close any funding gaps in the operating budget. And you'll see that in the 5-year outlook from year 2026 through 2028. So those are pretty much the theme of comments and questions that we had from the May 12th board meeting. And then our recommendation, as I mentioned, is to hold a public hearing and approve resolution 2025-07, adopting the final annual budget and work plan for fiscal year 25-26.
So I'm gonna look to my left and my right before I go for public comment. Any questions? All right, perfect. No comments from the board. Do I have public comment? I'll start with online.
No public comment online.
Okay, have any,
Public hearings, just to clarify, so we open the public hearing and.
public hearing open? Does that change any of my colleagues and whether you guys want to make any comments or questions? I'm still seeing no. Thank you. Do we take public comment for public hearings?
Yes.
Perfect, just making sure. All right, do I have any public comments in the room? All right, I've got one.
Thank you very much, Alan Hirsch. You've worked very hard on this, and we're gonna have an extra meeting that's to be, your attention to this, your plates are so full as city council people that you forgot their time for this thing is to be noted, and I appreciate that, boring down on the revenue side. I didn't quite get as much as I hoped out of the last meeting, but you spent the extra time and you bore down, so I'm quite appreciative most of that. I know the LRTP is coming out, but I was kind of disappointed on this topics. I thought we had discussed the need for quantitative results, not just balancing the budget, not just sort of thing. And it's not noted here. I know it's down the road, but the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So we should put that squeak down here in terms of what we need to add and in terms of quantifying the results we want. Because our job is not just to run empty buses very efficiently on a budget, but actually put as many people on those things for a given time. So I'm hoping we'll stop measuring that in addition to measuring the beans. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your public comment. Next.
Michael Barnbaum. So I did a lot of budget reading this weekend, both for tonight's budget and the city of Sacramento budget, which will be debated tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. And let me tell you, the difference is night and day. The day is this budget. The budget to oppose is tomorrow night's budget. Let me just put that out there on the table. While there has been a lot that has been done with trip restoration for services that were eliminated during COVID. The reason that this is a great budget, there is a lot of work we've done and come to the table at every month, including an extra session last month for a finance workshop. What Executive Director Bernstein and staff have done for us at the table is lay out what is ahead for the next 12 months. We're going to be, among other things, talking about, for folks watching in the public on the live stream, the rural transportation needs assessment, the transit operations contract, which there's a small item about that tonight, we'll get to later. Short-range transit plan goals, which I have 5 separate goals on that. YOLO 80 managed express lanes discussion, fleet buses and electrification, the Woodland Transit Center, the transit finance workshops, and fare payment options and vendors with the discussion about the Connect card included under that topic. So there's a lot coming up in the next 12 months. And thank you for setting the table on that, for putting us to work. And so I think what we have ahead, we're being put to work in the next 12 months for sure, not just the staff alone. And so I'm very comfortable with what is presented tonight. And I think the discussion, frankly, in more detail on the short range transit plan could set the table for the next fiscal year and beyond to reintroduce service or get creative and add new service based on what we have goals written in our notes. So I would be comfortable, Madam Chair, and making a motion to adopt the budget presented by staff tonight for fiscal year 25-26. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, any additional public comments from in the room? All right, and any additional public comments online?
No public comment on.
All right, perfect. Looking to my right and my left, seeing if there are any questions. Okay, great. I've got questions. I'm sure I was making space. I'll just start with and then move my way backwards. The public comment that we heard regarding quantifying and having some data outcomes as metrics of success. I know we did hear that last year. And I do remember several of us saying like, that's a great idea. I think at the time, what we had said was, you know, hey, our new ability to measure ridership and data was coming, I want to say roughly December is what we said last fiscal year at this time. And so we said, hey, let's pause on that. Where did that go? Is it in here and maybe we just don't see it? Like, do we need to articulate that more?
A great question, and this has been a topic of conversation. So we presented to you, I want to say the month before last, the short range transit plan, existing conditions report, and with that goals, including kind of key metrics that we want to measure in terms of how are we measuring the performance of our system. And so with those metrics in place for the short range transit plan, that will give us a benchmark that we can then compare our progress against. As far as the transition to new data sources with the automatic passenger counters, those were installed as of last December. They are now working in most of our vehicles, except for our very oldest vehicles. For whatever reason, we've had quite a bit of challenges. So we have now been collecting data. We're continuing to go through the process of figuring out why some of our buses it's not working. There's been a lot of hardware issues, to put it mildly, but we hope to be very close and we've had our APC contractor has been out here multiple times in recent weeks trying to troubleshoot the issues on the last buses. So it's taken a lot longer than we wished it would have, but we're getting there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just 2 follow-up questions. Do we have, so appreciate we're working on it. It sounds like, you know, it's hard to anticipate those kinds of issues. Did they give us an ETA or do you have a potential ETA on it should be hopefully fixed by?
I'm gonna ask Daisy to come up and give us the latest.
I think so. It sounds like it's on.
There we go. It was on in our hearts, but. No, but it's okay.
You're funny.
So Daisy Romero, Director of Transit Operations. We have been having weekly conversations with the company that actually installed the equipment, and they should be out here mid-July to also make repairs, because unfortunately some of the installation that happened, they installed it incorrectly, and so it started pinching the cables when the doors were closing.
Oh, no.
So they're gonna be out here mid-July, as well as our other software provider, which is TripSpark, which runs the back-end technology of all of it. They're all gonna be here in July, and we're hoping that once they're out here, they can actually take a look in real time and see why our Orions, which are the older buses that Director Bernstein was talking about, aren't working. And so, for example, like our Gilligs are working perfectly fine, the counts are doing really well, but our Orions, which are the white vehicles, are not counting. So we're hoping that by the end of the summer, everything should be up and running. And then we should be able to start collecting our data.
What has that meant? Cause I know we have some ridership data, one that I think we get from you all like monthly, right? That's part of our newsletter. And then also that we use for our budget. So again, I'm just gonna reflect back. If the counters aren't working, does that mean our data isn't accurate?
Well, we have our GFI data, which is like the silver box.
Got it.
That sits in the vehicles where we've done all of our cash or cash volume tickets. We also have Connect Card, which is our tap on reader. Occasionally, sometimes that data gets messed up, but for the most part, it is pretty accurate.
Okay, perfect.
It just doesn't count stop by stop level data. It's like a whole. So essentially, it just kind of takes that whole month, that whole day. We can track it by like trip. So for example, like the 7 a.m., the 8 a.m. night, so on and so forth. But we can't see it by stop level data, which is information that a lot of our partners have been asking, because that's kind of where the meat and potatoes are at, because it's really where we can see where our riders are actually getting on and getting off. But right now, all we can really see is how many riders we have for that one specific trip on that specific day, and that's about it.
Okay. All right, thank you. I don't live quite yet, just in case. And so just so part two of that question then is fingers crossed, we'll have all of our data working, everything, let's just say by the end of July. Is there a world in which we could connect some of our metrics and our budget together more? Like I said, I think we had some things, and I'd have to pull up my notes from last fiscal year that we flagged that we would be interested in doing. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I think as part of the short range transit plan, you'll be adopting an implementation and monitoring plan, right? And so that it would, whether it's quarterly reporting or monthly reporting, kind of directing staff to evaluate our progress. And so that can be reported also in the budget. We can look at absolutely ways to incorporate that into the budget each year, but I think you'll probably want to see reporting more frequently than once a year, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And with the APC data, I think the intention is for those metrics to be, the metrics that we identify and establish to use for tracking would be based on APC data, because as Daisy said, that's really where the meat and potatoes is in terms of understanding, are we actually meeting the needs of where people are trying to get to?
Okay, I think that's very helpful. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so outside of what I heard from public comment, I had a question, and I know Autumn and I had a discussion today, so Chaz, I know you are ready. For this question. In regards to, it looks like we are finally using up our COVID dollars, our CARE dollars, hopefully I'm saying that right. And we are transitioning to, some of the dollars will be transitioning to our dollars that we had kind of been accumulating historically since 2020. Specifically though, what you and I kind of like dug into last year, and you discovered was that the UZA Sacramento dollars we had not been pulling those down, and a good chunk of those are specifically allocated to West Sacramento. And so the question that I had was, were we able to ascertain exactly how much accumulated dollars from 2020 to present? And then also, I know those dollars then should be used in West Sacramento, and then a little bit of Sacramento and the airport trip is Autumn what you shared. And so how are we then incorporating those back dollars and then moving forward into this budget, particularly if we ran out of COVID dollars or used all those dollars up, and this is somehow supplanting that?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with, just the past year, and we've talked to you guys a lot about this. We mentioned it in our internal controls updates for quarterly financials. We talked about it after the presentation of our audited financial statements last year. And then we've also just been, emphasizing the work that we've been doing on reconciling all of our grants and other funding sources. And so that was really important because COVID related funds, CARES are for some money. What that did is, because it funded 100% of operating, it kind of reprioritized the funding to utilize those first, right? And so while we were using COVID related funding, we also cut our services in half. So we're not spending the COVID related funds quick enough, right? And so that is also something we talked about last year. And then while that's happening, we're getting allocations of 5307 UZA funds each year, right? So now we're in 2025. So you're right, they accumulated 5307 funds for Sacramento, Davis, and Woodland. There are,
And Chaz, I just want to make sure, only, so we're speaking the same language.
yeah,
At least when you and I had met last year,
Mhm.
it wasn't UZA funds for Woodland or Davis that had been accumulating, at least according to our conversation, it was the Sacramento funds.
it was all.
But it was all three.
All three,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Mhm.
Will we be able to distinguish then which is which? Because when we spoke
Oh, yeah.
last, okay, perfect, we'll get
So-
into that.
Yeah, totally. And so the way that this 5-year outlook was presented to you guys two years ago, it had just one line item for federal money. It didn't break it out by Sacramento, Davis, or, Woodland. So in this current year that we're in, I broke it out so that you can see how much we are using. And so it's broken out again in this 5-year outlook. So the reconciliation that we've been doing in this past year, which is where we spent a lot of our time, because we really just needed to know where we were, what our starting point was in order to know how to plan a lot of things, right? Capital and operating and restoration, expansion. So once we did that, we were able to, kind of gain some footing there and strategically kind of roll out, when we were gonna use the accumulated funds for all three of the UZAs. And so then we got the SB 125 money. So that kind of changed the formula again, where we said, okay, now this is to assist us in closing some of those operating gaps. So what we've done in this current budget and, for forecasting the next couple of years is a good balance between utilizing the accumulated federal funds as well as the SB 125 funds that we have for next year and the next 2 years after that. So for this budget specifically for 25-26, we are utilizing all of cycle 1 SB 125 money. So that gave us a little more time to kind of spread out the accumulated 5307 money. So you'll see if you're looking in that first column for 25-26. For Woodland, we're using 2.8 million in the 5307. For Davis, 300,000, that's 2 years of the allocation. And then for SAC, you just see us using 1.7. And then you see it tick up a little bit in the following years. So this right here, we're just kind of spreading out where we need it. There is a certain timing on these federal funds if you don't have them programmed in a project to use in a specific fiscal year. So it was very difficult to kind of figure out how much we needed for each year, but we accomplished, that. So that's what you're seeing in this 5-year outlook is the current year that would be coming in and allocation. And what this specifically assumes for just Sacramento, if you're just looking at this line, is about a 1.3 annual allocation, plus some sprinkling of the accumulated 5307 funds from the years before.
So I think what would be helpful, at least for me, I'm gonna take us back ever so slightly to our conversation.
Sure.
And specifically what we talked about, and I appreciate now that you, it sounds like, have had some more time to look at accumulated funds. You have found that UZA dollars for Woodland and Davis had also not been getting drawn down appropriately. But what I heard in our conversation was that those had been, and it was mainly Sacramento's dollars. And specifically, what we talked about, it was roughly like 1.2 million a year that wasn't, that wasn't getting drawn down starting in 2020. But we were unsure, right, about it. And so I think for me, my first question is, were we able to actually get a dollar amount of how much we hadn't been pulling down
Yeah.
for UZA for Sacramento?
Yes.
Okay, so I would love to know, like, what's the accumulated dollar amount before we move forward with like sprinkling it in?
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is the accumulated amounts that we could verify as far as being unprogrammed. So once you're allocated an amount for the year, we have to go through a process where we come up with the projects, like how we're gonna use it. We use it for operating or capital. So then we submit those to SACOG for approval, and then we submit applications to FTA to get them in the grant for specific fiscal years. So these ones here, what we did was, we looked at what was unprogrammed first. And so we're like, okay, we need to get those into grants. And what took more time was looking at the funds that were programmed and whether or not we claimed all of it, and kind of where we were. So a part of being able to claim funds that were already programmed, let's say for 2021 and 2022, or sorry, 2021, 2019 and back, there was more work to see if everything had been claimed, because as you know, we had a lot of change in staff, a lot of change in leadership, so there were things that fell through the cracks. And so we think that we have it down to know what is left in the money that was programmed but not drawn down. And then as far as 22 through preliminary in 2025, for SAC, it's about 4.8 million.
Okay, so, because I want to make sure I'm following, because I know it's a lot, and I know it was a lot of cleanup too.
Yeah.
And I was never, because you were just digging in there, I wasn't able to get that number back then.
Oh.
To be fair to you, because you were trying to dig in and like pull these strings. And so I'm hearing around 4.8 UZA Sacramento dollars that were we've used words like unprogrammed, programmed,
Yes.
not drawn down. I just want to make sure I'm using the right language.
So anything from 2020 to 2021. For SAC specifically, we did program SAC UZA money. So it was just a matter of seeing if we have drawn down, by submitting claims.
Got it.
So drawing down is that the SACOG project planning was approved, the FTA application was approved, and now it's in spendable form to draw down. Okay, so then on an annual basis, we get an allocation. Then we have to go and program it. So that means going to SACOG, submitting our projects, getting that approved, going to FTA, submitting our applications, getting that approved, now it's in spendable form. So the 4.8 million that I gave you is the amount that we could identify at this time, which includes a preliminary 2025 allocation, is about 4.8.
Now, just to be clear, because we talked about programming and not programmed,
Mhm.
this 4.8 million that was, it sounds like programmed, but not drawn. Okay, so this is all 4.8 million is all dollars that were not programmed and not drawn down. I just want to make sure, because
Yeah.
you said a lot of things.
Yeah, you can't draw down on unprogrammed funds.
Okay,
So
so they were programmed.
They were not.
Okay.
programmed. So this is what we just submitted we just submitted SACOG applications, and we're submitting our FTA applications tomorrow to program the 4.8.
Okay, were there dollars that were programmed that we just didn't basically invoice for as well?
No, we actually drew down on all of it, the previous years.
Okay.
So as far as we can tell.
Okay, perfect. And so now going to this year's budget, because what I heard you say is, and now we're gonna sprinkle it in. And so we have roughly on average around 1.3, it changes every year. I think when we spoke last year, it was like 1.2 million. That is being, potentially that can be allocated to UZA Sacramento. And then on top of that, this 4.8 million, it sounds like will be sprinkled, and that's how we're getting up to 2.65 in the out years. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
At least for me, I think I'll probably have, like, when we go to our budget workshops, probably more questions about like just the intricacies of this, but I just really want to say the budget and the transparency and how it was laid out was really, really good. And I know that what you started with, there was a lot to just untangle and try to discern, right? Based on what was remaining. And so thank you for that. And thank you for figuring this out, because I know that this was a lot too.
It was a lot, but it needed to be done. You guys had a lot of really good questions that we should be able to answer. And it took a lot of, we had a lot of learning curves. I was not familiar with transit, funding. That also was a big learning curve for me too. But we have really good partners. SACOG has been amazing. FTA has been really supportive. Everyone that we've worked with, have been really, really supportive and very helpful. So I think that that helped move things along a lot quicker. And it was my priority coming in here to figure out, you know, where was all this money coming from? Because there were just acronyms being thrown all over the place. I had no idea. Plus COVID throws off anything regular, right? So it was like really hard to discern what was our regular money.
Yeah,
And then discovering that there were accumulated funds that weren't being programmed, which I would not have known that those annual allocations weren't being programmed. But in a regular day, you would get that annual allocation. You would say, hey, guys, what are we gonna do with this? Where do we need it? Then you put your projects together, you submit it to SACOG, they approve it, you submit it to FTA and a grant. It's in spendable form, you spend the money, you draw it down, you're done. Next year, you get another allocation. So that's typically how it should happen. When you have an influx of one-time relief funds and you cut your services in half, you know, it's like
yeah. it's
you
hard to follow.
lose, yeah, you lose your fee.
Well, and I think this is really important as we are looking at, again, fiscal cliff and really understanding what revenue dollars, whether they be semi-consistent, are available. The last question I have, because again, I knew about UZA Sacramento dollars, not being pulled down. I didn't, at least I'll say I didn't remember, that was also happening in Woodland and Davis. What was the amount? Because you said they also had accumulated. So Sacramento's was 4.8. What was Woodland's and what was Davis's accumulated amount?
From what we can tell, and we are still doing some reconciliation because we have 5339, we've been talking mostly about the 5307. But from what we can tell, for Woodland, we have about, this one goes a little further back, which is about, this goes back to 2020, years went back to 2022. So for Woodland, we're looking at about 12, a little over 12 million.
12 million in accumulated UZA funds. I just want to make sure I'm tracking.
Mhm.
That's a very big number. Can you give us Davis's? You might have already
Well,
had
Davis
this
is a little-
conversation,
Well,
so.
Davis is a little tricky because we get that flat 150
Mm.
every year.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I did
So,
forget about that.
but if you want it, we have about, this is going back to, let's see. If we go back to 2022,
I think it's also important,
yeah, there's about a million.
important to note that it is I mean, and it's footnoted as well, but you know, it's an informal agreement that is with Unitrans that has also been agreed to by this agency, this board to sort of be reexamined. I mean, so, you know, just.
Yeah, and I've been in conversation with Jeff Lynn about this and we were talking about some discussions that happened when Leo Levinson was here before me, the interim CFO.
Yeah.
And so we found that there was an agreement on a temporary basis to increase the allocation amount as of 2023 through, I think, next year. So we did find that we had an additional allocation for 2023, 2024, and we anticipate a little bit extra in 2025. So the total amount of accumulated Davis UZA funds, given that recent conversation with Jeff Lynn, I hope it's okay to say, but yeah, so we had that conversation. So it's about, yeah, 800,000.
And just to make sure I'm tracking, when you say 800,000, it's more like, hey, we had a flat amount that we agreed to. Thank you, Director Ferris, for noting, like, and we're gonna evaluate that in the near future. But of that flat amount, we also weren't drawing that down. Okay, I wanted to make sure we were
And we
Just-
didn't have it programmed.
programmed.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you can't draw down if it's not programmed.
Got it. Okay, perfect. And likely, at least during COVID, we weren't programming it because we had COVID dollars.
Right, it just fell to the side.
Okay. One, I love hearing 12 million for you, Woodland, because these are also dollars that are spent in those jurisdictions, right? And so, that's important. Oh, yeah,
In
please.
UZA, not
Okay.
the jurisdiction.
Oh, perfect. Can you, thank you, Director Bernstein for flagging that. Can you define what that means though?
Sure, yeah, so as you heard at the budget workshop last month, we draw funds from 3 urbanized areas as they're defined by FTA. So Davis is a urbanized area, Woodland is an urbanized area, and then there is a very large Sacramento urbanized area that includes all of Sac County, a little bit of Yolo County, and little bits of Placer, El Dorado counties. And so that the overall allocation of that is very large, and we share that UZA with about 6 transit operators, the biggest one being Sac RT. And there is an earned share formula that we get a piece of that for service that we provide it within the Sacramento UZA. So that includes West Sacramento, but it also includes our service to downtown Sacramento, to the airport. It could also include the UC Davis Med Center, although that is fully paid for right now by the university. So we don't actually bill for that, but any service, any vehicle miles and hours that we are running in the SAC UZA are eligible for those SAC UZA dollars.
Perfect. Thank you so much for our lay people who are maybe listening. Okay, so I don't have any additional questions. Chaz, thank you so much for your patience and your willingness to walk me through that from which was remaining for me for last year. And like I said, for all of the hard work and your team's work on this budget. It really is amazing, like you heard. And the last thing I would say is, I know we talked about it last year, but the 5-year projection, I sit on many a board, and it's rare that you see projections. And so thank you so much for going through that. I know it's not easy. And I know it's never perfect, but the fact that we're attempting it, I think just speaks to our fiscal transparency. And so with that, do I have any other questions, comments from my colleagues? Do I need to close the public hearing? Okay, I saw you lean in. So public hearing is closed. There you go. And then this is an action we're adopting this, correct? Perfect. I will entertain a motion.
Happy to move the 26, 27.
Second.
So I think it's 25, there you go. So I got a motion from Director Frerichs to move the 25-26 budget forward, and then Director Chapman and Vic, I think you guys were tied. So I will go with Director Vega on the second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, seeing none, motion passes. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all.
Good job. Man, we are kicking butt, y'all.
I just want to also take a moment to appreciate Chaz and her team for the amazing amount of work that this has been, really truly above and beyond the call of duty to get all this done. So thank you so much, Chaz.
Thank you.
Really hard, so thank you. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving forward. And we are ahead of schedule, y'all, just saying, with all my questions.
Yeah.
So we are now moving to item 7.
Just a little behind.
Are we?
Yeah.
It says 7 on the thing. And it's 39.
Item 6. Item 6.
All right, thank you. Director Ferris is keeping me honest, which means I'm gonna speed us up. Item 6 is next and okay. Director Bernstein will be presenting to us.
Great, thank you so much. So item 6 the recommendation is to consider authorizing your executive director to sign an MOU with the city of West Sacramento and SAC RT to extend by 2 years a pilot program that operates West Sacramento's on-demand service into downtown Sacramento. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Now let's go one more. All right, so this is the first time we've had a conversation about VIA, at least since I've been here, and then now, oh my gosh, almost 4 years that I've been here. So we wanted to take an opportunity to just kind of take a step back for folks who were not on the board in 2018, to just kind of understand what this service is, how it relates to our service, and what are the kind of the interrelationships between the West Sacramento service and Yolo. So West Sacramento On Demand, also known as VIA, is a citywide microtransit service that's operated by the city of West Sacramento. It's a turnkey system contract with a company called VIA. What does that mean? Turnkey means that VIA is responsible for the backend algorithm and software, just like our provider Rideco is for Beeline, but they also actually are responsible for contracting drivers and vehicles. So VIA essentially does everything. They have a max of 13 vehicles in service at any time. You know, compare that for Woodland, for Beeline, we have 4. And the service hours, are listed there. So it's a very robust service, that serves the city of West Sacramento. Next slide, and just a reminder, it kind of, for those of you to visualize what our Yolo bus service network looks like in West Sacramento. We have, 4 routes that serve local service in West Sacramento, most of which are on here. The 137 that goes to Southport is not. And these serve the neighborhoods to the north and to the south. And then as well, we have our 42A and B that come through, and all of those services converge at the West Sacramento Transit Center, that whether they're coming from the west or the north or the south. And then go across the Tower Bridge past Sutter Health Park to downtown Sacramento to various destinations. And because of the way, and that really has to do with the unique geography of West Sacramento, right? It's like kind of like all the buses have to go across the Tower Bridge. So what that means is that between all of these services going east to west, we have 15-minute headways between the West Sacramento Transit Center and downtown Sacramento. That is the highest level of service that we have anywhere in the Yolo bus system. Essentially all day, every day, 15-minute headways. So it's a high level of service for that short corridor, but then it's relatively dispersed elsewhere in the system. Next slide. So, in last year, we received word from the city that they were in discussions with SAC-RT about a pilot to expand the VIA service into downtown Sacramento to 3 locations that you see here. They're the Kaiser downtown facility, the Sac Valley Station for connections to Amtrak, and then 8th and N, which is just kind of a central location where people can also connect to light rail. So they have some of these conversations. The city around the same time won a grant from the Air District of $13,700 to fund a pilot to provide 3,900 rides on this new expansion into downtown Sacramento. And they requested that YoloTD sign this MOU, essentially giving our endorsement to the pilot, even though they didn't actually need our permission to do it. They asked for it in the spirit of collaboration and good partnership. I went ahead and signed that without your approval, because given the limited scope of the pilot, it didn't seem something that rose to the need for board approval. And that MOU is for a year and it expires at the end of this month, June 2025, which is why we're bringing this to you tonight. Next slide. So that pilot happened. It started in October of 2024 and it continues today, in fact, despite the depletion of the Air District funds. It's been extremely successful. They've given 11,900 rides to date, and that's as of the end of April, which is about triple the estimate that was expected at the time of the MOU. And now 10% of the total rides, VIA rides are now to downtown Sacramento. So suffice to say, extremely popular service. People can now, before the pilot, people would take VIA, they could take VIA from, wherever they live in downtown, in West Sacramento to the transit center, and then from the transit center transfer to Yolo bus to get downtown. Now they have a direct ride from wherever they are in West Sacramento to one of those 3 locations in downtown. So as you can imagine, it saves people the transfer, and we know that a 1-seat ride is a very attractive option. So, with the success of this pilot and the clear demand and desire that there is to see it continue, the city and SAC-RT have requested a 2-year extension to the MOU, basically to go through June 2027. And that coincides with the end of the current contract that the city has with VIA, which also ends around June of 2027. Next slide. So it's important to understand the kind of the relationships between Yolo bus service and VIA. Until recently, it was fully funded by LTF, or local transportation funds. And you all know, we've just sat through a workshop on what this funding is. So just a reminder that it's a pass-through funding that is prioritized for transit, but can be retained for other uses through the SACOG unmet transit need process. The VIA service is not eligible for federal transit funding because it doesn't meet prevailing wage requirements or fleet maintenance requirements. So it's wholly dependent on other sources of funding other than federal funds. The city now projects an annual funding gap of 1.8 million for the next fiscal year and every year beyond to maintain that VIA service, and that's at the current levels. And currently that gap is being filled by one-time funds. Next slide. So how has the presence of VIA impacted Yolo bus? Well, what we've seen is when VIA was introduced in June 2018, we were providing about 20,000 rides a month on average in West Sacramento. And then we've seen from then to now a 65% decline in our ridership to where we're now around 7,000 rides a month. 12% of that decline happened before COVID. So within the first 18 months of this, after the service launched and then before COVID started, we saw a 12% decline. So the decline was happening, but then of course with COVID changing everything, you know, it's continued to go since then. Next slide. And post-COVID, the recovery of our transit ridership is lagging in West Sacramento behind the rest of our system. So for example, as you heard when we had our short-range transit plan existing conditions report, we've recovered 92% of our pre-COVID ridership on the Route 42 A and B. Whereas our West Sac local routes have recovered just about 55% of pre-COVID ridership. And so what you see is there's a gap there, right? That, you know, why are we lagging more in West Sacramento than elsewhere? And, you know, some of that has to do with the service cuts that we did as well as the impact of VIA. If we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what we've seen with the results of the downtown pilot. So again, the pilot started in October and these numbers are through April, and it's tricky. We don't like to try to infer too much from just 6 months worth of data. So we're not going to make any grand conclusions about this. But if you look at the 3 lines, the line on top in dark orange is the VIA ridership overall. So for their entire system, you can see it went from about 13,500 rides a month in October to about 18,000 rides in April. So a pretty significant increase. Now, some of that is seasonal, right? We're only talking about 6 months in the middle. You know, this was winter. You know, we have November, December, January in here, but so we do see a pretty significant increase. You know, and the downtown pilot, of course, a big chunk of that going from 0 to 2,000 rides. And what you see with our Yolo Bus West Sac ridership is it kind of flattens in November and then drops, and it's been kind of relatively flat. We haven't seen the same kind of springtime rebound that we would expect to see for that service. Also just wanted to share, there was a survey that the city staff did about surveying people who were taking this new pilot and asking them, okay, if this service wasn't available, how would you have gotten to downtown? About 35% of the people surveyed said they would have taken the bus. So taking the bus or taking Uber or Lyft were the 2 largest modes that have been kind of shifted over to VIA according to the survey. And then another question about how the VIA service, go to the next slide, how the VIA service changed your transportation choices. So we see that about 25% of people said they're riding the bus much less since the pilot started, and about 22% riding it less, and then about half saying they're riding it as much, but very few people saying that they're riding the bus more, as you would imagine. So that's next. I want to pivot and say a bit about what does this all mean for YOLO bus funding? Well, so you know, of course, LTF, both YOLO bus and VIA rely on this funding. And then I want to say a bit about FTA and how this could impact our FTA 5307 funds, and then our state transit assistance, which is the other source of TDA. So I'm going to touch on each of those briefly. So for TDA revenue overall, this was a slide that SACOG presented at our last meeting. You know, as we know, the general outlook for these TDA revenues is not great, particularly for state transit assistance that relies on diesel. Given the way that the state is moving away from diesel fuel, we anticipate this continuing to go down. And then LTF is mixed, but what we've seen is that here in Yolo County, at least, our recovery of LTF since the pandemic is really lagging behind the region. So we're about 24% below where we were before the pandemic in terms of LTF revenue, whereas the region is 35%. So what we see is you know, both of these revenues are volatile. And they're overall not going in the right direction. So as we have 2 services that are essentially trying to use the same funding source, right, that can present some challenges. And then to talk about, yeah, sorry, Janine, go ahead and go to one more slide. Forward, please. Yep, and then here we go, right there. Thank you. So this is again a slide that was presented by SACOG at the last meeting about how that SAC UZA earned share formula goes. So again, we share this funding source with like 6 other transit operators, and how much we get is dependent upon these 4 different factors. So one is population, one is revenue hours. In other words, how many hours of service are we operating? One is revenue miles. How many miles of service are we operating in that SAC UZA? And then the third is unlinked passenger trips, which is ridership. So what we see is if we start to shrink, if our ridership shrinks, if our revenue miles and revenue hours shrink, the total share that we receive of those SAC-USDA dollars also shrinks. So right now, we're at about 3.5% is our share of the SAC-USDA funding that we receive. Prior to the introduction of VIA, it was actually about 4.8%. So what we've seen is that our share has decreased over time. And so if you took, there's like $35 million that goes to the SAC-USDA from the feds every year. We get about 3.5% of that, right? Which, so it's about $1.3 million a year. If we were getting 4.8%, we'd be getting more like 1.6, 1.7. So basically, we're talking about, we're getting $500,000 every year less than we were. And then we would be if we still had that same share. So I say this to, just for us to understand that there are implications when we lose ridership and when we reduce service for that SAC-USDA share. And that, as our percentage goes down, SAC-RT and the other providers in that region, their share goes up, right? So the money doesn't go away, it just goes to the other transit operators in the SAC-USDA region. So to kind of summarize this, VIA has largely replaced Yolo Bus as the dominant provider of public transit trips in West Sacramento. Both Yolo Bus and VIA face budget challenges and rely on the same funding source. And the expansion in downtown, if it continues, it appears likely, based on our early data, to kind of become the dominant provider of trips across the bridge between West Sac and downtown Sacramento, given the fact that people don't have to transfer, it's a one-seat ride, et cetera. So this would likely reduce the available state and federal funding for Yolo Bus. Oh, I apologize. I didn't circle back to state transit assistance funding, but state transit assistance funding, STA, is also allocated by a formula that part of what in that formula is what our existing budget was for the prior year. So if our federal funding goes down, then our STA also then follows and goes down as well. All right, so there are some benefits of us being a part of this MOU. So you're hearing me give this and you're saying, oh, this sounds really gloomy. But there are some good reasons that I think that we may want to consider joining this MOU. The first is that the MOU states that the city is solely responsible for the operating costs of the service. In other words, they're not looking to pass on those costs, and that they would not make any additional TDA claims based on the expansion into SAC-RT's service area. So those are some commitments that are in that MOU, if we sign it. Also, it keeps us at the table with West Sacramento and SAC-RT about the future of transit service in the area. And it preserves access to VIA ridership and service data, which we now have. We have had for the past year since we got this MOU. And that helps us plan our system and any changes we would want to make our system in response to this. Having that data, having the ability to plan around the VIA service is very helpful. Next slide. So what are some potential pathways? Well, so one pathway is we sign the MOU and one is that we don't sign it, right? There's not a lot of gray areas here. It's kind of one or the other in terms of the request that we're making for you. So what would it mean if we signed it? Well, the service expansion would continue with our endorsement. The city would assume full responsibility for essentially meeting this need, right, of connecting folks in West Sacramento, not just to other places in West Sacramento, but also now to downtown Sacramento. So they're assuming responsibility for that. And we may consider reducing or eliminating our local fixed route service in West Sac, perhaps as part of our short range transit plan, recognizing that we're just not seeing necessarily the ridership that would, that would make sense for us to continue to investing in that service. And that, we would potentially receive a smaller share of federal SAC-USDA funding as a result. So that's one pathway. The other pathway is we don't sign the MOU. Well, the service expansion will likely proceed whether or not we sign the MOU. We don't have a legal mechanism. There's nothing that says that the city and SAC-RT can't voluntarily enter this agreement without us. The city or SAC-RT could seek additional TDA funding based on the service expansion if they haven't explicitly committed not to doing that. And we would still likely lose the ridership and have the sort of negative impacts on our ridership and funding. So while we wouldn't be endorsing that arrangement, we would likely suffer the same consequences if we did not sign the MOU. So that concludes my presentation, and I will just say, I'll just share that, it's been a good collaborative series of conversations at the staff level, and Daisy's been a part of a lot of these conversations at the staff level, and I spoke with City Manager Aaron Laurel just this afternoon, and he wanted to reiterate that while the service has been primarily funded by TDA funding to date, the city is very actively exploring other options for looking for ways to sustain that service over the long term so that it's not continuing to be wholly reliant on TDA funding. So with that, I will stop my presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. I am going to look at my colleagues first. Questions? Comments? I'm not seeing any. Nope, okay. They're saying no. Okay, I'm gonna go to public comment.
No public comment online.
Okay, nothing online in the audience. Okay. Thank you so much. When you come up, can you please state your name too for us? Of course. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Crystal McGee Lee. I'm the president business agent of ATU Local 256. I am basically the talk for the members that unfortunately aren't at the table. I have one member in the back. I was listening to, and I want to say I appreciate you, Madam Chair. On May 27th, on the intro to transit, you asked some great questions. And I appreciate, I watched that. And I also appreciate Mr. Friedrichs, your comment about if you're not at the table, you get eaten. And so that is why I'm here before you. I'm a little disconcerting though that Ms. Bernstein was basically, it sounds to me is that VIA is taking over fixed route. If you look at some of the benefits, as you said, in regards to RT, Sacramento Regional Transit, I'm a little befuddled. We scrapped our micro transit. So now you're here pushing micro transit. So I'm a little disconcerted in that regard. I was looking at some of the things that you had mentioned in regards to eliminate local fixed route services. We have currently 120 members, and I'm sure they do not know that this board is looking to eliminate or reduce, as far as I'm concerned, fixed route. And so it's just amazing to me that we're not at the table. ATU Local 256, the drivers are not at the table when all these decisions are made. I'm encouraged by the collaboration that you have with SACOG, and I'm encouraged by, the collaborations that you have with Sacramento Regional Transit, but you don't have any collaboration with the people who get on that bus right next door. It makes me, and I'm sure when the members see this, it's gonna upset them tremendously. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I don't know if you're aware, I'm a transparent president business agent. We're currently in negotiations with Yolo right now, with yourselves. I'm sure that the executive director has mentioned that, and if not, here I am. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. I'm looking forward to the next meeting in regards to the transit funding. I would say to you, I would not vote yes on this MOU. You don't have to. And I appreciate you saying that. You don't have to. So with that being said, thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you so much for public comment. Do we have any additional public comment? Perfect, we have an additional one.
Hi, Alan Hirsch. I caught that 11,900 rides for $13,000. That's $1.10 a trip. That is an amazingly cost-effective transit product. Even if 30% of that would have been already on the buses, even that's $1.80 a trip. That's just amazing. And I think we're trying to figure out how we get as many trips, as much travel as we can for a given dollar. So I see that, but then I don't see the full cost of VIA's trips. I don't see that compared to our fixed routes. And I don't see anyone asking the question, because we have a basic problem of governance, because we balkanized our transit. People want to go travel regionally. That's where the big miles are. That's where the big benefits are. But we balkanized it to little micro sort of things, and I think there's a problem here. The MOU collaboration seems to be the right way to work things around, but I just think there's a structural problem here in terms of balkanizing the transit. All these different agencies that are coordinating. There's economies of scale here in some of these things. Some of it's labor, but and I just think whether we're really optimizing, it's like somehow the river draws the line between whether it's RT and YoloTD. And I think I know the short range transit only for YOLO Transportation District, but I think there should be a dropping back, and I suggested possibly YoloTD should be part of RT. Or possibly RT should run the buses instead of Transdev, maybe there's just economies of scale there. I don't know, but I think that's worth exploring. I mean, collaboration seems to be the right thing at this point, I'm gathering, but I think we should think about those economies of scale, because people don't really care who operates it. It's actually kind of confusing, DIA or LTD or YoloTD or whatever. It's actually kind of confusing, and the different taking and whatnot, so that doesn't make any sense. So we need to kind of, and people on travel, people don't care about crossing borders, they care about getting to their domain, they want to have regional transit. And this works, and the governance seems to work against regional transit. Every little politician in every city wants its own service. And I don't think that's what people want. They really don't care. They want to get to their destination, whatever government agency it comes across. So good collaboration is the right move, but I think we need to, you politicians need to get all these competing transit agencies to coordinate as surrogates for the public. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have another public comment.
My name is Alex Benavides. I'm an operator for Yolo Bus. I think that even if fixed route regular ridership eventually fails for West Sacramento, the district's answer could easily be the Beeline service for VIA. I know it's still kind of getting off the ground now, but maybe at least probably I'd say every other day, have patrons ask, does this go to Davis? Does this go to Davis? Does this go to downtown? So I think there's interest and the will to use the Beeline service to get further out, especially with additions like the baseball park and other events like that. Maybe events to Old Sacramento, for example, you can still get there from West Sac. So Beeline, I think, eventually could potentially have the edge over VIA, at least to West Sac, if things are really looking that grim and no one really is interested in the routes 40 or 37. That's my piece.
Thank you very much. Any additional public comment?
Want to respond?
Absolutely.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members. Originally, I wasn't planning to speak, but there was a comment made 2 speakers ago that I would like to respond to regarding collaboration. So just from what I know in the business, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments has what is known as the Transit Coordinating Committee. Transit Coordinating Committee, hosted by Barbara von Bechtold, brings in staff from throughout the transit agencies in the 6-county region. 6-county region consists of Sacramento, Yolo, Yuba, Sutter, El Dorado, Placer, and 22 cities within. Many of you whom serve on the SACOG board. From the SACOG board side of things, there's a collaboration group known as the Transportation Committee, and they meet pretty early in the month at SACOG itself as well. So there are both collaborations at the staff level, and there's collaborations at the board level. And having done some consulting with our friends over in Placer County, the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, similarly, because they do their own unmet transit needs process through the Transportation Development Act, they have a transit operators working group. And their transit operators come in and collaborate on a lot of things. One, which I know Roseville Transit, going back to some earlier public comment, and the Transit Operators Working Group collaborated to get an agreement in place that commuter service does run to the May Lee State Building on Richards Boulevard at North 7th Street, which was the complex mentioned earlier tonight in public comment. So I know they and El Dorado Transit run service to that complex as entities outside the general Sacramento County area to serve their commuters right to that building. So there is a lot of collaboration in the region. It's more, you have to know where to look, you have to know where to study, and you kind of have to kind of be, pardon the pun, a nerd in the business to really see what a lot of things entail. And so that's just what I want to respond to the public comment from a couple of commenters ago, but because of some of the companies that are mentioned in the item in which you're asking to vote on, I looked through the item very carefully and just an abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse myself from voting in any direction on this item. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional public comment? All right, I'm gonna bring us back to my colleagues. I have some questions, but I want to make sure I'm deferring to my colleagues first. I'm looking to the right, looking to my left.
I think it would be important to hear from you as a member of the West Sacramento City Council.
Absolutely.
First.
I'm not wearing my West Sacramento hat though. I do have a couple of questions. So TDA, I just want to make sure, I think we'll hear more about it in our next workshop. Yes, potentially.
We did present that review.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah,
And we, all jurisdictions get TDA dollars, right? Okay, I'm just, cause I think a decent amount of focus was on that, so I just wanna make sure I'm following the bouncing ball. And we all spend it in various fashions, right? Okay, so at least I can speak to West Sacramento. We have chosen to spend it on VIA. It does not pay for all of VIA, and I think that was something that our city manager flagged Autumn for you. And the way that it's presented, at least here, is in sort of competition too, is how it's presented. And I don't necessarily know if I think that's a fair characterization of how we've chosen to spend our TDA dollars in West Sac, because again, hearkening back to 2018, you weren't here, I wasn't here either. But what Councilmember Ledesma, Director Ledesma at that time shared was the reason why VIA came to be was because buses were driving around empty in West Sacramento then, right? It wasn't as if the solution that was developed was not a solution to a problem that was being seen. And at least at the time, it sounds like just YTD wasn't meeting the service needs of West Sacramentans at that time. Fast forward to where we are at now, again, TDA, I think as our city manager mentioned to you, does not cover VIA. We, at least in West Sacramento, have found a way to make sure we are covering the transit needs as it may, that remain from YTD. I will speak for West Sacramento here in saying that I think there's a role both for YTD and our fixed routes in the same way there is a role for YTD and fixed routes in Woodland, and yet we have the Beeline and Winters as well. And so I don't necessarily know if that is the most prudent thing, right, to say like, hey, we're gonna have to eliminate services. I get exactly what you're saying, and I don't think that is what we have in front of us, at least right now, is that we would be eliminating services in the same way we're not necessarily discussing eliminating services in Woodland and Winter per se. In fact, we're talking about bringing some more fixed routes back to some of these places, even though Beeline is serving. And so I want to just flag that for us, that it's TDA dollars, how we all choose to spend our TDA dollars aren't necessarily in competition with YTD. And I just think that's important that we at least say that. From a data perspective and a partnership perspective, I 100% agree with Director Bernstein in that in order to get the data that we would need, that I feel like are the other piece of the puzzle to figure out what's ridership for VIA going over and back between West Sacramento and to Sacramento. In order to get that data and get it reliably and all the things, you're gonna need a data sharing agreement, if not an MOU. And so I think that would be one of the things that we would need to decide on. Do we want to collaborate and be at the table as YTD, or do we want to say, hey, on principle, we're not going to participate, and then potentially cut off our nose to spite our face? Is the only other thing I would flag there, as Director Bernstein said, the agreement can move on with us, or without us. We don't necessarily need that MOU to be signed. And so I think it's important that YTD be, at the table. And so I would highly recommend, that we sign the MOU so that we do have a voice and we're not on the menu, as you say. And then I also am hopeful that we will, as we get our systems fixed more, have some more accurate data of ridership and what's happening throughout West Sacramento, quite frankly, throughout all of our jurisdictions to figure out what's being lit and what's not. So that's what I would share. Comments or questions or feedback? I'm looking to my left, I'm looking to my right. Director Barrett?
Yeah, a few things. So first of all, thanks, appreciate the overview. I mean, I feel like we didn't originally participate in the MOU. I mean, from the sort of 2018 to, 2024 period. I mean, we've now participated in it, sort of the, first part of it. I know it's gonna be the expansion, and so, they're being asked to do it again. I mean, either way, it feels like it could be okay. I mean, I do generally agree with the sort of participating in sort of a regional way. I think that's important. A few items, I think, first of all, really appreciate the member from ATU 256 being here this evening. This is the first time, and I've served on this board since 2012. I've never seen a member from ATU
I'm
256.
the president.
Yeah, that's right.
You have never seen the president?
Never
come
seen the
here?
president in that entire time, so I'm absolutely very grateful to see you here.
That's
So
not-
I'm just telling you, I'm grateful to see you here this evening, so
Thank
thank you very much for that. I think, a couple quick items, as it relates to, we are getting ready to go into the short range transit planning process. And obviously it will be a full evaluation of services and, and potential reallocation of resources, as well. I think in terms of where routes are, I think it goes to one of our other public commenters, who's happens to be a driver and member of the ATU. But I think that comment about, where does Beeline operate, right? Why is it not operating to this destination, others? I feel like that's part of the process is us sort of seeing what is working and what's not working. These discussions were happening in 2018 or in it leading up to 2018 when VIA was first launched in West Sacramento. I think at the time, this agency was not meeting the expectations of that member jurisdiction, and so that is sort of some really, I think, led to the impetus for the creation of VIA. I do think that as part of our normal process of doing business, where we are constantly sort of evaluating, obviously the ridership, but also evaluating what's working, what's not. I think if there is, as part of the short range transit plan, we may see that we may not end up having as much in the way of fixed route service in West Sacramento. Frankly, because there's demand in other parts of the service territory for us to do more in other places. We know that there has been a discussion and for a long time about sort of serving the eastern parts of Woodland and the eastern parts of Davis, sort of essentially Road 102 kind of connection shuttle system, whether it's Beeline or fixed route service, that's an example. We've talked about reinstituting potential fixed route service to the city of Winters and possibly further than that, including, like it used to serve down to Vacaville and back. So I'm not sure I completely appreciate the commentary around being supportive of labor, because that is very important to me personally. I don't see it as a zero-sum game, though. I think that we can still, there's still an ability, it's not like people are losing jobs, I think, just personally, at this point, certainly. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think what it's much, we may end up not having as much fixed route service in West Sacramento due to the fact that it's not as well utilized, whether due to VIA or not. I mean, I think there's just, we may end up making some adjustments to our services that, where we reallocate fixed route services in other places that actually are interested in and desire them. And then just as a quick comment with regard to the sort of the potential, this sort of other public comment that came in around the low cost of individual rides. I think it's really important to note that, yes, while there were 11,900 rides total, 3,900 of those rides were for free. That was, they were given to people for free. So it's not exactly $1.90 a ride or whatever, $1.10 per ride as it was sort of estimated. I mean, $3,900 of the actual 11,900 rides were done as an incentive through a grant received by the Yolo Solano Air Quality District to incentivize and sort of boost the new via expansion service into downtown Sacramento. Thanks. Those are my comments.
Great points, absolutely. Any additional, yep, Al?
Yeah, I agree with you, Director Rudy, that it's probably better to be at the table than be sort of stepping away from it, because we're in the game. If you're not in the game, then what do you got? And in terms of sort of reallocating, I mean, I thought he just dropped in here like out of an airplane and here looking. And so it's, I'm kind of looking at it fresh eyes, I guess. So, and as you all know, Winters is begging to have some additional service. So if there's a reallocation of.
You're like, bring it over here.
That's right.
I will
Maybe we
say,
should look at Via.
I'm looking at Sir, I will not argue with you on that one, but I am looking at you, Kimberly, because what is on the agenda is not. And that's why I just want to keep us on topic. We're not talking about cutting services. We're not talking about reallocating. So I'll keep drawing us back.
Yeah, and I say that sort of looking down the road.
Yeah.
As we sit at the table and we collect more data about how this all works. So that, the staff can have more data points to look at, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And, so that's what I have to say about it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vassia. Amy. All right, do you need us to make a motion? All right, perfect. So do I have a motion? Let's start there.
Sure, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to authorize executive director to sign an MOU with the city of West Sacramento.
Okay, motion by Chapman.
YSCO second.
Okay, by CEO seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, any nays? All right, motion passes. Perfect. I am 5 minutes off, y'all. No, wait, I'm 20 minutes off. All right, item 7.
Take it away, Daisy.
Last but definitely not least. So our next item is to authorize a 1-year contract extension with our transportation for our transportation services with Transdev Services. And direct staff to begin preparation for a new RFP. Next slide, please. A little bit of background. So currently YoloTD contracts with Transdev Services for operation of all of our transportation services, including Yolo Bus Fixed Route, Yolo Bus Special, which is paratransit, and Beeline, which is our micro transit service. This contract has been in place since 2018. The base years, as we call them, the last base year expires this July. So at the end of July 31st, 2025 is when the base year expires. After that, we enter into what would be our option years. A little bit of background continued. So what we're asking you today is to go into that one option year because it allows us to continue our Yolo Bus services without any interruptions. It also, because it's already been established in the contract, we already kind of know what that cost is going to be moving forward. It also provides us time to complete our short range transit plan, which we've all heard a lot about recently. And it also gives us time to prepare for a new procurement. So one of the challenges with this existing contract right now, it's an aging contract. As I mentioned, it was back in 2018, which was a long time ago. And so some of the things that have come out of this contract is workforce recruitment and retention. Unfortunately, our labor market is changing very rapidly. And that includes wages and hiring and all of the things that come with a labor market shift. Also, there's been changes in the services that we've operated. So at that time, Beeline and microtransit essentially did not exist. So back in 2018, it was essentially an idea that was in everyone's minds and in the clouds, but it wasn't actually implemented. But now it's here, it exists, and again, another topic of conversation that we've been having lately. But it isn't something that's really fledged in our existing contract. The other thing that's also come out of the contract is our industry best practices. And so some of those have been not necessarily out to date, but you know, they could be better. Again, going with like new technology, new introduction of other items that have come up, software, again, the labor market, so, getting a new contract can kind of help, you know, close the gap on low. That's next slide, please. So what are our next steps? So as I mentioned, July 31st of 2025, that our existing base year contract expires. After that, we can go into our option years, and this is what we're asking you guys tonight. Is to at least exercise one option year. And then in August 1st, that one option year, if voted yes, would start taking place. And then we're hoping from August through December to start developing a new scope of work and begin the RFP with consulting assistance. And then we're hoping that in May of 2026, we have our new contract for transportation services. And then August 1st, that new contract will take effect. And I believe that, oh, no, that's budget. So, again, like since it's already built in, those costs are already built into our existing contract. It's already kind of been built into what Jazz mentioned here today. So those costs are already there. They're not an issue. And I believe that this officially concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Daisy. I'm gonna bring it back to my colleagues. Any questions or feedback before I take it to public comment? All right, seeing none, do we have any online public comment?
No public comment online.
All right, do we have any public comment in person? Mr. Hirsch?
Yes, I assume we almost have to do this at this point. We're kind of at the deadline. This probably should have been discussed a couple of months ago to give us, the board has some options. But here we are. This is fine. But I think in the LRTP, we should be considering RT as a possible alternative vendor and look, give ourselves some options. And in terms of shifting to another vendor on the transit, obviously that's gonna take some staff time too. It's gonna be distractions from other strategic things. So it's a very complex sort of thing. But possibly better union agreements. But I think, this seems to me that we'll have to do this thing, but I think we should look at bringing it back into the region, into the governance of the elected officials. So thank you very much.
Any for your public comment? Any additional public comments? All right, yes. Oh, Michael?
Thank you. Michael Barnbaum, City of Sacramento, County of Sacramento, and Sacramento State. I think for continuity purposes, what was described in the PowerPoint presentation, you saw the benefits and the challenges. And I think for the greater Sacramento urbanized area, you see that the benefits in this presentation far outweigh the challenges ahead. And like I described in the budget item, several key points that are gonna put us to work next year, beginning July 1st through June 30th for that budget year. This is gonna be one of the key things, is how do we address this to a more 3 or 5 year agreement later on. But given the time constraints that were presented in this report, and what we need to look ahead to, I first would like to recommend discussion at the table that a motion be made to extend this current contract by the 1 year as assumed in the budget that was adopted earlier in tonight's meeting. So that's number one. I'll put that on the table. But number two, kind of going back to what I had mentioned at some previous meetings, the 1 year gives everyone here time to look and research what options there are, and some examples I previously gave. Store Transportation operates Yuba Sutter Transit, the Galt Sacramento Express, and the South County Transit Link, which includes the Highway 99 Express from Casunas River College to Galt and Lodi. MV Transportation operates all the transit services in Roseville, which includes local fixed route Arrow and commuter services as well, including the commuter services to the Maylee State Building I mentioned earlier. And those are just a couple of examples, but it also opens the door in the next 12 months to explore other transportation companies and who they provide contracts to, and bring many more to the table between now and the end of June 2026. So that's what I'd like to say. So yes, I did put the motion on the table and hope it can be considered. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna bring it back to my colleagues. Do I have any motions? Okay, all right,
Second, I do have a quick comment.
all right, so I've got a motion from Director Vega, a second from Director Barracks, and then also a comment.
Yeah, thank you. I did think just one quick comment, and we sort of after hearing the public comments and such, I just want to say that, I think it's little unfortunate that there is a characterization, that somehow either YTD staff or this board is not acting appropriately, that this process is either rushed or it's being done too late or something along those lines. I mean, it's a 7-year contract. It hasn't even expired yet. And the contract had options for up to 5 single-year extensions. We are acting upon that, being asked to act upon that this evening. So I just want to clarify that I think that is perfectly reasonable. And, again, this sort of characterization that somehow YTD staff is somehow to blame for not doing something sooner, I think is misrepresenting that sort of scenario. Thank you very much. Happy to call a question, move the item, or vote on it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that clarification. Really good points made by my colleague. Yes.
Just a small point, just to agree with Director Fredericks is contracts have those extensions, they have 5 of them. That's why they're built in there to take care of things. It's kind of the way it's supposed to work.
All right, appreciate the comments, the feedback, agree wholeheartedly. Any additional comments by my colleagues to make sure we can space? Okay, with that being said, there is a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, seeing that motion passes. We are now ready to move on to Director Bernstein and your administrative reports.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to share a couple of quick highlights with you tonight. I want to mention briefly on our Woodland Transit Center, our ad hoc committee that was appointed of Director Fredericks and Director Vega, as well as a joint appointment from the city, had its first meeting last week. It was a productive meeting. I'd say we're making great progress towards identifying an alternative location in downtown Woodland for a new transit center to get us out of the County Fair Mall. Also, I had the opportunity to present to the Woodland Sunrise Rotary several weeks ago and talk to them about a variety of things, including the Woodland Transit Center, and that was got some really great feedback at that. Sacramento UZA, we talked a lot about that tonight. As a reminder, we are working with SACOG and SACRT to renegotiate the MOU that governs how those funds are divided. We've had 2 meetings in the last month. We have another one coming up later this week. We are looking forward to seeing some updated draft agreements. I would say that process is going well. And we're hopeful to have a positive resolution that largely retains how the funds are allocated, but just provides more clarity on roles and responsibilities for SACOG and SACRT. On the issue of CARTA, that's also been a very busy time for CARTA. There was the May and June board meetings are smashed together for whatever reason, and so we had one just last month. We've got another one coming up later this week. talking about a variety of issues related to the operation of the new express lanes. And we'll be presenting to this board in July at our next board meeting on the, some of the results of some of the work we've been doing, and then bringing that to the Carter board in August. That concludes my executive director's report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Bernstein. And then I realized that I did not ask my fellow board members, do any of you all have anything to report or share? Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, just want to know if, I mean, assume this will be the case, but just will the YTD staff be responding to, you know, the individuals that sort of reached out about the potential service to the Maylee State Office Complex? I know, just wanted to check it out.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yes, we have been in touch with them, and we've talked about that our short range transit plan, one of the things it's looking at is potential rerouting, particularly in downtown Sacramento, because we've had so many challenges with Golden One Center and, you know, many events, Capitol Mall being shut down. So we are, as part of that, looking at different routing options. And so we're taking that feedback and incorporating it into our short range transit plan recommendations.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Great question. Thank you so much, Director Barrett. I am going to ask Director Bernstein if you could do the long range calendar, and then I'll do Transdev. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay.
All right, so there's the slide. All right, so just look at our 3-month look ahead in terms of the long range calendar. Next month, short range transit plan workshop on scenarios and service changes. This is the moment on the SRTP we've all been waiting for, looking at potential possible changes. We'll also be providing an update on some of the work on the Yolo 80 managed lanes, particularly our traffic and revenue forecast, and the equity study that we're doing. So you'll be getting updates on those. The audited financial statements for fiscal year 23-24. Be seeing those, and we can cross off the if needed because we approved the final budget and work plan tonight, so we can cross that one off the list. We do take a break in August, so there will not be a board meeting in August. The next meeting will be in September. And then we'll be bringing you an update on our long-term capital improvement plan that we've been working on at the staff level to share what is our, looking out over the next 10 years, what are our capital needs. And then sharing an update on our multimodal program and Yolo commute, which is going to be undergoing a big expansion as part of the Yolo 80 mitigation plan, and an update on fair payment technology transitions. And then October, we are now holding for your next budget workshop. We don't think it's going to take the entire meeting. There'll be some other pieces that we're slotting in, but that's going to be our priority for October, is to give you that second budget workshop that you've asked for. And that's it.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Director Bernstein. Do any questions or comments from my colleagues on the long range? All right, I'm giving head shakes no. All right, next, Transdev. Oh, I think I do public comment on the whole thing, right? Okay, yes, all right. Keeping me on my toes. Next, I'm gonna do Transdev report.
Sure, good evening, everyone. So just quickly, like we went over last month, update on our training classes. So we currently have 12 in training. We have 2 that are gonna be graduating solo this week. And we are continuing our hiring process.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Don't keep looking at my colleagues. All right, now I'm gonna take the public comment. Come on down.
Thank you. Carter brings to mind, I-80 widening in Solano County. You'll notice they are using the new lanes as mixed lanes. They're not regulated, there are no tolls on them because they're taking their sweet time to put the tolling in. So it uses a mixed lanes, which is a violation of the sequel, saying they shouldn't be using them as mixed lanes for any time. They should always be tolled. So that's a problem, and I hope we in Yolo County do not open up the lanes before there's tolling. Please, let's do that. Second, maybe some people have heard about the sequel lawsuit. Maybe some people are curious about that. There have been developments, there have been releases back and forth. But I think it would be reasonable that the board should be informed, or maybe they've been informed through other means, but I think it should be out in the public and all the documents should be available. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your public comment. Any online, Madam Clerk? No public comments on it. Okay, all right, seeing none. All right, perfect. Seeing that there is no further business to conduct, the meeting is adjourned. I will note For the record that the time is 7:45. Yes, everyone, I did finish early. Our next regular meeting will be on Monday. This feels wrong, not May 12th. When's the next?
July 14th.
July 14th. There you go. Michael, you are on it. Thank you, Madam Clerk. July 14th. Thank you, everyone, for participating.